Well, let's start with the arts. We need to have more economic opportunity for artists, we need to have more jobs for artists, particularly post-pandemic recovery, so they have food on the table. In general, for our communities of color, we need to make sure, for our low-income communities, we need to make sure we have childcare as an option, because we know that when folks can't find childcare, they're not able to get to their jobs. And so that is a really big issue that I see and that we need to address for low-income communities and economic development. And then we also need to support our small, many times are mom and pop shops that are just trying to make it like everyone else. And so we need to be supporting their development, including addressing public safety. Thank you.
Well, yeah, public safety is a huge driver in terms of commerce and being able to promote trade and encourage tourism to our community. But we, government needs to stop raising taxes and live within its means. We need to cut taxes on small businesses and at least keep the tax rate the same on big businesses.
All right, several things. Accessible, affordable, quality childcare, supporting the right to organize, making sure that we have accessible, diverse apprenticeships, and incubator spaces. And a lot of these things are things that can start here at the UW. They're things that can be done in partnership between the city and the county. Childcare is an economic imperative. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have to correct inequities. And we have a mixed delivery model right now. We need to make sure that we have a universal mixed delivery model so that everyone can be accessing the workplace. We need to make sure that we have apprenticeships that offer work-based paid learning opportunities in all sorts of spaces, and supporting the right to organize in emerging industries like our cannabis industry. Incubator spaces are one of the great things that we can be doing too, especially with some of our empty spaces downtown, creating the environment for success for new businesses to start up, new nonprofits to start up as well that don't have the infrastructure but could succeed if they had a little bit of a helping start.
I think that over the next few years, the county's going to be able to reevaluate the best starts for kids, and I think that presents an important opportunity for us to be able to change the structure for childcare subsidies at the county level. Right now, the way that the childcare subsidies are structured, if you make it above a certain level, your subsidy just drops completely. And so a lot of people actually that have so if you're very low income, you'll get the subsidy, but if you're just above that income, then you get no subsidy if you're outside of the city of Seattle. And that's deeply problematic because it basically means that the worker can't, if they actually go to work, they actually end up, when you factor in the cost of childcare, you actually make less. So that's actually keeping a lot of workers, I believe, from what I'm hearing in the community, off the sidelines of being able to be part of the workforce. And so I think that's going to be a very critical issue that we have a possibility at the county level to address. I would also be looking at wage theft. It's something that the prosecutor's office is tackling, starting to tackle right now. I think that's a big issue that's impeding for people to have the right wages across the state.
So the pandemic has laid bare staggering inequities in the county that are disproportionately impacting our frontline workers, our childcare workers, workers in the ignorant profession. There's so much more that the county can do to support these workers at this critically important time. We need to do more to expand access to childcare, and I've been leading this work. I was one of the folks that led the King County Supervisory Board to reinstate our childcare subsidy and make sure that our childcare providers had a wage boost so they could be making a more living wage. We also need to increase apprenticeships. We need to increase wages, benefits, and other opportunities to connect workers with good paying union jobs. We also, particularly in the arts sector, the legislature just gave the council managing authority to look at increasing funding source to support specifically our arts community and our artists. I would vote in favor of this funding source that's so critically important for supporting artists, our frontline workers, and our empowering workforce at this time. Thank you.
Other lightning round. Okay.
So economy, this is one thing, this is why we're all here. We have an amazing economy, so it's really up to us to make that engine, that big business, the small business. How did we build such a great state? And it's through the innovators and the amazing people that have pushed through and created so many things here. Everything from the big companies that we saw at Boeing and on the biotech side, Fred Hutch, and so many things we take for granted. Even here, this university, 68,000 people here. My wife was here for 15 years as an innovator, working on science, and made her own incubator with friends over in the Fremont district. So it's about us trying to invest and allow these people to keep don't over-regulate. A government is valuable, and they are an engine as well. So when they build sound transit and these amazing things, and when they use their dollars effectively, which is what I'm about, is trying to get back to real utilization, monitoring, making sure we're getting the best value for it, and it's good for everyone, and that pushes our economy ahead too.
It starts with investing in emerging strengths, biotech, bioinformatics, AI, climate tech, green industry, taking advantage of the trillions of dollars coming in federal money and private money, matching money because of the IRA. It also mostly just means making this an affordable, awesome place to live, because where the workers are, there the businesses go. And so that is, I was a tech CEO, despite being a bleeding heart progressive, I was also a venture-backed tech CEO. And I know that in the end, you go where the talent is, and the talent is where the talent can live and thrive. So that means following through on housing affordability. I already laid out my plan for that. It means affordable childcare for everyone. It means every neighborhood is a 10 to 15 minute neighborhood. And it means a safe city. This is why the bus drivers union has endorsed me, because they're really worried about public safety. It means an equitable city. This is why the UW postdocs, engineers, and research scientists have also endorsed me, because I'm in the fight with them. It means progressive taxes, so we don't rely quite so much on workers and old folks on fixed incomes as well to do all the things that we're trying to do.
Thank you. We have another audience question, and we will start with George for this question. How will you address any potential upcoming budget deficits, particularly in terms of progressive revenue, if you're seeking additional revenue? And we'll start with George.
Well, we need to establish a culture of accountability in government. Local government has raised a lot of money over the recent years and spent a lot of money. And people have real questions about where all that money went. So for me, that means bringing department heads to account, kind of banging on the table and having uncomfortable conversations with them about it. And that means cuts to programs if revenue isn't available. But we should also look at revenue. Look, I'm against levy funding. I guess I'm being asked for time here, but I think that our levy process has us context switching between priorities, and I think that we need more money in the general fund.
All right, well, the county's heading into some tough budget years. The state didn't come through with the revenue fix that we sorely needed to keep up with rising inflation. And as someone who, in my day job, I oversee half of King County's budget, this is something I've been spending a lot of time thinking about. We need to be partnering with the state and working toward a long-term fix for this. But in the meantime, we need people in office who can use all the tools in the toolbox to tide us over. We need to get more aggressive with our bonding strategy. This doesn't mean more levies going out to voters necessarily, although it can. We have a lot of levers that we can pull right now in the county. We can be creative with the ways that we're using one-time funding, and we can be multiplying the dollars that we have with pilot projects, with grant revenue. We absolutely need to be looking also at our base budgets, which is where systemic racism and systemic inequities lie, because the way that we allocate our resources is guided by our values. Those values have changed over time, and we can be looking back at decisions made in the past to see how we can preserve our budget authority and to undo systemic inequities together.
The budget challenges that Becca described have been foreseen for many years, and unfortunately, we haven't had the political will to make the changes at the state level. What we need is somebody who's going to be able to make the advocacy, to be able to make changes at the state level, to bring together a coalition. That's what I have done in my work at Northwest Migrant Rights Projects, to build coalitions to make policy change happen at the state level. What I've heard from state legislators is that there wasn't enough leadership to push at the state legislature to make the priority of bringing removing the cap on property taxes at the county level, and that's where we're facing a $100 million shortfall at this point. And so we need somebody who's going to be able to address those issues at the state level, to make the political space, to make the tough decisions, to be able to make sure that Olympia changes the current structure that is burdening families, and that we're going to be able to find progressive resources so that we can make the investments that we need. I believe that we need to act immediately. In the meantime, I advocated for changes to the Human Services Levy that would improve, make investments possible, but I agree that long term we need to have a robust, progressive revenue sources to make the investments we need.
Yeah, I agree with Jorge, and I'm tired of living in a state with the most regressive tax structure where businesses, big businesses and wealthy individuals aren't paying their fair share. I have worked on these issues as a citizen advocate, as a member Washington Paramount Duty to help get a capital gains tax over the finish line. I'm going to advocate, if elected, to the legislature to obtain local jurisdiction taxation authority to impose an excise tax on big businesses. We are looking at a housing crisis. We absolutely need to renew this conversation to find a progressive revenue source to fund housing. We also need to renew the conversation, as Jorge said, about lifting the 1% property tax and making our property tax system less regressive by looking at homestead exemptions or other exemptions for fixed income seniors. I have started to have these conversations. It's critically important we get this done. And then cost savings can be achieved through investments in upstream solutions, such as the radar program, that is less costly than traditional incarceration.
Thank you. And as we pass this mic down to Ken, I will mention that because we got a bit of a later start today, we will go until 7:15. So we've got 15 more minutes here.
All right, this is an excellent question. Most importantly, it's really happening. We've been having a lot of years where year after year we're getting to that bigger and bigger budget. We have a very generous set of money that came from the federal level, and it reflects on everything. So it is about us to find ways to utilize and advocate for these valuable solutions, things that are actually working, and verify them. We need better metrics to make sure that we're getting the right value out of it, but we also have to see that return for our dollars. I know that I'm over there in the Wallingford Community Council, and many times we have great speakers come and talk about what they're investing our dollars in, but everyone is having this problem with taxes. So we also have a new thing coming where we're going to be looking to do a lot more development. And so it's up to us to try and make these in lieu fees. In the past, those have been a negative, but these in lieu fees actually have a direct ramification for how we can influence them and make those developers create the best value for all of us. So we're going to use that again for another opportunity to get some additional revenue.
I disagree. Not everybody's struggling with their taxes. The top fifth only pays 4% of their income in state and local taxes. The bottom fifth pays 17%. I see this every day when I'm at the doors talking to older folks on fixed incomes or workers, and I don't hear it from people who have a lot of money. And there's a reason for that. I've actually published a plan on this. I'm on the Progressive Revenue Committee with the Transit Riders Union, so we're working on this, and I published my own plan on this in The Stranger in an article called Seattle Needs Money. It involves some tinkers to the Jumpstart tax, particularly to the top rate. It would raise more income. It also involves taxing parking, both open parking lots, significant fees on new parking, and especially intensely in transit-rich areas. It involves a vacancy tax on long-term empty units. It involves a 1% income tax with a $500 deduction, which would get tied up in court briefly, and is an opportunity to create a statutorily flat tax and open up, but actually deliver on something that's progressive for our citizens and raise hundreds of millions of dollars.
As a longtime public servant, I understand the importance of being good stewards of taxpayer funds. I know in Seattle the budget has grown exponentially in the last 20 years, We need to look at the budget and the programs that we're administering at the city and whether or not they're having the intended outcomes, and if they're not, then we need to pivot to programs that we need to be helping the residents of the city, particularly the vulnerable residents of the city. We really so we need to look at the budget, and we need to but I'm not opposed to increasing revenue if after looking at the budget we can't get where we need to be.
All right, so we have time for one more question. There are so many excellent audience questions. I thank you all for submitting them. And because of that, I'm actually going to let the audience pick what they answer as the final question. Raise your hands in the audience if you want to hear them answer how they would improve pedestrian and bicycle safety, or would you rather hear them talk about the mistake that they recently made and handle it? How many want the pedestrian answer? How many want the mistake answer? I think the mistake answer has it. That's what we're going with. These are really good audience questions. So, starting with Becca, what's a mistake that you recently made and how did you handle it?
Okay, first up here, on the campaign trail you get a lot of advice from people, and you're moving quickly and you want to give people time back in their day, and there was a time recently when I got some advice. I prioritized letting the person get back to their day and asked one clarifying question, but should have asked a second clarifying question. And when I realized that the advice they had given me and that I followed was kind of backfiring, the first thing I did was send them a text and say, hey, I think that I understand where this went wrong. I am incredibly sorry if I misunderstood what you were saying. We got on the phone, we talked through it, and I think that we are actually now closer than ever. But I think communication, really gets down to a lot of successes and failures, and if we're able to find a path forward through misunderstandings, which come up all the time in our workplace and come up all the time in public policy, that's a win.
I don't know if this qualifies as recent, but as a nonprofit leader, you're having to make kind of tough decisions on a limited budget for the needs in the community, and one of the most difficult decisions that I've had to make is when we faced a budget shortfall and had to reduce our staffing, and we had to make the tough decisions of having layoffs, and I think back in the period of time and trying to figure out the steps that I could have taken, and I've evaluated things that I could have done differently. And I think it's partly that lesson that I carry now in thinking about the austerity and the budget shortfalls that we have now, and that drives a lot of my passion to not put people in those situations where we're going to have to cut back vital services for the community. I don't want both our government leaders, our nonprofit leaders, to be able to have to do layoffs for people who are providing vital services or have to cut back on compensation or benefits, and that's what inspires me to make sure we have progressive revenue to prevent those concentrations from happening.
So this is just a small example, but recently I forgot to drop my daughter's lunch off at her school when she was relying on me to get it to her school, and I felt really bad because she didn't have her lunch, and it just speaks to the fact that as a candidate and a working parent, I'm constantly making mistakes. I feel like I am constantly falling short of being there for my kids, sometimes in an authentic way, and I'm constantly having to have conversations around why I'm here at this forum as opposed to with my kids. And I just bring up that example because I know we're all dealing with our own personal challenges and we all have our own lived experience, but we just have to give ourselves grace when we can't be there for those in our lives like we'd like to be. and that, you know, running for office can be hard, but let's all give each other the support that we need. Thanks.
Coming round the mountain back to Kent.
So this is a great question, whoever put that up. And this goes about personal nature, about what people are, what we represent, being able to say sorry. We all are making mistakes. We're all doing things that, just why did I say that? So, you know, fortunately, I do a lot of big things, and professionally, we have little things that mess up. That weld's not right. But that's not what happens. You know, we have a lot of good things that I've gotten through, and never at that level. I think a big thing that I see people that know me from before on this campaign. So I learned from things. Our last campaign had mistakes, and we've learned lessons. We've hired consultants. We've gotten a better messaging. So thinking on things like that, there's opportunity to do better and go back through things. It's about running a campaign that kind of builds on relationships and makes that important. And so we've definitely learned things. And that was a mistake last time. I went just about issues. This is a world. We have to work together.
So many examples I could think of, but the ones that come to mind right now are personal. And I'm a father to 2 little boys, 7 and 10-year-old boys. They're sweet little monsters, and they make me crazy. And I'm also a husband, and together those things, on top of being a working dad, give me an incredible amount of opportunities to screw up. And at the most important thing in the world. And so just the other day, I was stressed about something. My 10-year-old did something that normally I would have said, hey, don't do that. And it came out way more intensely. I hurt his feelings, and it took me 10 seconds to realize that I had done that. Not because of him, but because of me. And of course I felt like a shithead. And, you know, and I did the same thing I try to do every time, whether it's in a professional setting or personal setting, just to sit down and be vulnerable and say, I'm really, really sorry. That was not about you. That was my fault. Own it. Ask for forgiveness, but not in a way that obligates him to try to deliver it to me then, but just to say, you know, I hope at some point you can forgive me. I really love you. I don't always say I love you in the professional context.
Like Ron and Sarah, I'm a working mom as well. I have 2 teenage daughters, as I said earlier. And, you know, it is hard to be a working parent, be a mom, and be a wife, and also run for office. But I'm running for my family. But recently, one of my daughters needed me, and everything's going so fast, and I didn't have the time to take the minute to talk to her, and I wasn't there for her. And then, you know, I talked to her, and we talked it out, and we worked it out, and I think communication is the biggest key to many mistakes that you can make at home and in the office for that matter. I think communication is the biggest thing when that happens.
So I've made a lot of mistakes over the course of my life. The biggest one that I've made is with relation to drugs and alcohol. Don't use drugs. Pretty straightforward. I became addicted to methamphetamine in 2022. Was homeless, and the way that I addressed that was through a lot of help from a lot of people, friends and family, and recovery circles. And you know, one thing you learn in recovery is to face your deepest, darkest self. You know, we're up here on the stage and are trying to give off our best impressions. And the only way to work through that is to take a good hard look in the mirror and make amends to people that you hurt over the course of that process.
Thank you. That concludes our questions from the candidates. Thank you. You know, running for office is hard. Fun is not, there's fun during the campaign, but it's not always fun on the campaign trail. You're putting yourselves out there and being vulnerable to people everywhere, and so I appreciate each and every one of you taking this time to share with this audience and engage directly. And I really do want to say, I've done a few forums, and the questions that were submitted for this forum were so good. Unfortunately, we have time constraints with an in-person event, but I just really want to, I guess, express for the candidates' benefit how engaged this audience is, how many questions we had about how to help protect our, trans community and neighbors, how to help protect our entire community, whether they're housed or unhoused, worried about the budget, worried about, okay, you call yourselves progressives, but what progressive solutions have actually worked and what can you hang your hat on? Just a variety of different things, about safety, about education, really wanting to address UW-specific concerns, especially when it comes to housing and homelessness. So I just wanted to take that moment to let you know that we received so many questions on that abortion access following the Dobbs decision. So just a thick stack of excellent questions that unfortunately weren't able to get into here with this audience, but I hope you all take the time to engage further with this crowd. So thank you so much to this audience here in person and to the online audience for tuning in. A huge shout out to the young Democrats at the UW and to the 36th, 43rd, and 46th Legislative District Democrats for putting on this forum. And special thanks to all of the volunteers. Can the volunteers please stand up, because they really did tremendous work. Changes and did it with grace and efficiency. I'm tremendously appreciative, and I know all the candidates and people are here too.
And thank you, Crystal, for hosting.
Thank you. Thank you. And before we close, I just wanted to remind you about a couple of things. One, about the City of Seattle's democracy voucher program for the Seattle City Council campaigns, not the County Council, unfortunately, yet, maybe, but not now. The City of Seattle will provide each resident over 18 who's a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or lawful permanent resident, aka green card holder, with $100 in democracy vouchers that you can donate to a candidate or candidates of your choice. You don't actually have to be a registered voter to do that, although I do encourage you to register to vote. All City of Seattle District 4 candidates have opted to participate in the Democracy Voucher Program. Finally, I want to remind everyone once again to vote. It's really important. Ballots will be mailed to your mailbox starting Wednesday, July 12th. You can register to vote, update your registration, and see what will be on your ballot at myvote.gov. You can also vote if you have a previous felony conviction. Your right to vote is now automatically restored after you serve your prison term, even while you're on community supervision. That's a change from what it used to be, so please spread that word, because we want as many people making their voices heard as possible. So thank you so much for tuning in and attending, and have a wonderful evening.